So I would like to share about how the soap is made and the soap manufacturing process. So when we talk about the soap manufacturing process, the important thing is what is the raw materials that have been used to produce a soap. So the raw materials is oil and fats. So the oil and fats at the early stage will undergo the pre-treatment plants to refine the oil and remove the free fatty acid. So it's contain a triglycerol. The product is contain a triglycerol, so it will be react with the raw material number two, which is soda air or potash air. So it will be react each other to promote and perform a saponification process. So the result of the saponification process is producing a glycerin and a soap. So we have to remove the glycerin from the mixture. So the green solutions is a raw material number three that have been used to remove the glycerin from the mixture. And the last raw materials that have been used is the additive. So the example of additive is sodium carbonate, perfume, and also a dye. So the why we add the additive is to attract the customer and fulfill the customer requirement and demand. So all of this additive is important to attract the customer to determine how the soap is look like and also how the soap is smell. So it will give the attraction to the customer and fulfill the customer requirement and demand. So triglycerol is the main component in the soap manufacturing process. So we have to decide the suitability of the triglycerol that will be used to further process in the saponification process. So there is two important parameters that need to be considered before we choose the triglycerol. So the two important parameter is the iodine value and the saponification value. So saponification value is the amount required of potassium hydroxides that need to be used in a milligram to saponify gram oil and fats. For iodine values is defined as the grams of iodine absorbs in 100 gram of samples. So there is a factors between these two parameters. So this the factors will be determines the characteristic of the soap at the end of products. So that's why iodine and the saponification process is the important parameters to in a soap manufacturing process to determine the suitability of the triglycerols that will be chosen and that will be used at the saponification process. So we continue to the soap manufacturing process. There is four major process or step in the saponification process. First is saponification. Second is a glycerin removal. Third is soap purification, and lastly is a finishing. For the saponification process, oil and fats will be react with the soda air or potash air, so it will be react each other to perform and promote a saponification process. It will be a batch process and fill in inside the tank with a stirring with an agitator support to stir the mixture of soda air and also fats and oil. So it will promote and perform a saponification process. Saponification process will perform under three conditions, which is a cold process, a semi-boiled process, and a hot process. So there is a three type of conditions in the saponification process, as I mentioned before. So the first process is a cold process. Cold process is process that take place under a room temperature. This usually apply at a batch process and it require a longer time and almost about 1 days to complete the saponification process. And also at this process, the glycerin removal is not included at this stage. And the second process is a semi-boil process. This is process that take place under a temperature of 70 to 90 degrees Celsius. And the last process is a hot process. So a hot process is a process that take place under a temperature of 100 degrees Celsius. So this process is require a shorter times and more faster, and also the glycerin is then separated from the soap by rinsing with an alkali. And the next step is glycerin removal. So the result of the saponification process is glycerin and also a soap. So the glycerin have to be removed from the mixture. So uh, green solution will be added inside the mixture to separate the glycerin from the mixture. So how it separate is it will change the density of the glycerins. So the soap will be at the top, and then the glycerin will be at the bottom of the chamber of or the vessel. So it will be separated by the differential of the density between the glycerin and also soap. And the third step is soap purifications. So there is the remaining unreacted sodium hydroxide and also a sub. So it will be further centrifuge to remove the remaining sub, and also the unreacted sodium hydroxide will be react with the weak acid like citric acid and phosphoric acid in order to remove the unreacted sodium hydroxide. And the lastly is a finishing. So finishing, the product will be heat up until a temperature of 120 degrees Celsius. This is because it consists the remaining water. So we have to remove the water. So it will be heat up until a temperature of 120 degrees Celsius. So the water will be evaporate, and the final product will be more pure, which is the increase the purity of the soap. So that is the general step how the soap is made.